Are you thinking of leaving corporate, but too afraid to make the move? Have you already escaped corporate, but are finding it hard to run your dream business? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure challenges out on your own? We have created a podcast for corporate escapees running their own business. This is the Corporate Escapees Podcast by Build, Live, Give. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day as a corporate escapee. We get real with no corporate BS. And now, over to your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to Corporate Escapee Stories by Build, Live, Give. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today I'm very excited to have Chris McGowan from Lusio Rehab. Chris is doing a bit of a balancing act at the moment. He's got both a cash flow business where he does some consulting, but he's also got a purpose-driven business and a startup, which is there to help 10,000 people over the next 5 years improve their mobility. It's an absolute wonderful story. And Chris talks about his daily struggles with creating something from scratch where there is no map. He's got to do it all for the first time. It's a great interview and very inspiring. I'll now hand you over to Chris McGowan from Lusio Rehab. I hope you're inspired by listening to our wonderful guest stories. All of our guests know the one ingredient to rapidly grow their dream business. That is picking the right suppliers. Let's face it, it's too hard doing it all on your own. So with this in mind, we have created a free on-demand training which gives you the 4 essential questions to ask suppliers. I've combined my 18 years experience at Coca-Cola and 7 years advising corporate escapees all over the world to give you actionable advice in less than 25 minutes. Simply go to buildlivegive.com/webinar. If you are tired of underachieving and want to fill gaps in skills, please watch our on-demand training now. The link will also be in the show notes. Please check it out. Welcome, Chris McGowan from Lusio Rehab to the Corporate Escapees podcast brought to you by Build, Live, Give. So, Chris, we're going to get to know a lot about you today, but why don't you just start with something your family or friends would know about you that our listeners wouldn't?
Yeah, hi there. I'm not sure there's very much that my corporate world wouldn't know that my family don't. And it's not that I'm in the category of oversharing, but I do think that there's an authenticity to sharing as much about you as you can and delivering it in a timely way so people kind of get to understand the real you. And I think if they understand the real you, they buy into who you are as a leader. So I say I don't believe in oversharing, but I do believe in being as open as possible, you know.
Great. Well, I know that something we talked about pre-going to air was around your love of cycling, and I'm sure that all your family and friends know that, but many of my listeners wouldn't know just how much you love cycling. You were talking about just, that is the sort of the one constant in your life, and why do you think you're so passionate and love that time on the bike?
I think it's, as I was saying to you before, it's just the ability at any time, with no influence from anybody else, no one else making a decision for you, to be able to just get the bike, jump on it, and spend as little as much time as you want to, out on the road. But I think that I don't know where the science is in this really, but away from the tasks at hand, different information flows into your brain. And as long as you can remember it when you finish the ride, you can get inspiration on things in which you need to take action on. So it's probably the freedom of being able to do it anytime, not dependent on anybody. And then also the different thinking patterns it allows me to access. That's what mostly comes to mind. But now I think about it even more, and I didn't mention this before, I've met so many ridiculous contacts out through cycling. And there's such a connection these days to people who are out there, who are looking for community, who are looking to be fit. And it's surprising, actually, the amount of, social interaction I have, which then leads to business through cycling. Now I think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, so true. And as we were saying off air, that's something that I sadly miss. I can't cycle as much as I used to, but I just love those conversations of, riding along, meeting new people all the time. And I think other sports have elements of that, but I just think cycling is just a brilliant way of doing that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it really is. I read this, someone sent me an article once about, people looking forward, not at each other, breaks down some sort of barriers, and then they can, the flow of energy gets them talking about deeper issues. And I kind of get that. I've got mates who are a little bit closed, and when you jump on the bike and you're out there for a few hours side by side, you may not say anything for an hour and a half of the whole ride, and then some deep and meaningful conversation pops up. With guys or girls, whoever's out there. So, there's something about the companionship of it that, it's pretty unique. So, I love it, definitely.
Yeah, great. Well, look, I don't know how much SMS from a global brand perspective, and you can tell me that in a moment, but certainly from an Australian perspective, it got a lot of limelight for a long time. And I know you were there for, I think, over 12 years, but just sort of take us through what you did at SMS and then how that sort of evolved into you ending up deciding to leave and do your own thing.
Yeah, so I was there, as you say, I was there for 12 years, and I built a business within a business. So, you've got the mothership, which was SMS Management and Technology, and they have a recruitment brand called M&T Resources. Now, when I started there, it was the business I ran anyway was very much a non-existent, loss-making business. And my job was to build it from ground up. And this isn't exactly a question, but I think it's probably, to date, the thing that I am most proud of and have loved the most. And, the only reason I think I left that, it was time. I mean, the entire team that I hired was still there pretty much 12 years on. It was just time to give people behind me a chance to, change the business, do a better job, which actually I think they did. It's a very daunting thing to face when you realize that the people behind you are capable of moving it from X to Y because of their style. So I didn't necessarily want to, but felt like I had an obligation to give other people a shot. And so I moved from one area of the business to another area of the business with the mandate to bring about the same kind of commercial evolution and cultural change that I had done for that recruitment business. I moved from recruitment to consulting with that mandate. And I think the reality is that it was too big, too set, too hard, too institutionalized in some ways to do so. And I think when it got down to it, I just wasn't fulfilled in that. And so both the organization and I chose to part ways. And that was challenging for me. That was tough. But I suppose the interesting thing was it wasn't necessarily about the job. It's been this, I think, for about the past 5 years, or maybe even more, actually. I think I probably started it as a leader in that M&T business. I've been completely committed to this cause of freedom through freedom for employees by creating stability and security and financial reward for them. And really, when I was in M&T, I was committed to that. I moved to consulting to do the same. And the past 3 years, actually, it's the same thing. Really, what I'm trying to do is to create freedom through stability and security for people that work with me and around me. And so leaving SMS, the experiments I've had in between now and then, it's all been about that, really, completely.
Great. And just for our listeners, when you say that freedom and the stability, so you're creating something new, and I know we're going to talk about Lusio Rehab in a moment. You're creating something that's never been created before. It's completely brand new, but the team around you get that stability because it's a success. Is that what you're referring to there?
I mean, yes, absolutely. Funnily enough, Lusio Rehab emerged from Explore the Blue, which is the original company. I formed Explore the Blue with a vision of hiring people who needed an opportunity. That was about, it's back to this freedom thing that I'm talking about. So I had this thing of employing return to work mums, return to work dads, people who needed a chance to be able to find somewhere secure for them to work and also an opportunity to earn money. So one of those people that I brought into business was this chap called Armin, who was an inventor. So I met Armin because he applied for a job, not necessarily with me, but with one of my clients, and he just wasn't really fit for the job, and I think he was really struggling to find work. When I met him, as ridiculous as this sounds, I just saw something in him. I mean, this guy was Entrepreneur of the Year in Iran in 2012. He'd launched a robotics business across Asia. And in coming to Australia, he was just really struggling to find his place. So I said to Armin, look, come and work in my business. I don't quite know what we'll do, but we'll do something. And trust me, I'll take care of you. So he and I started working on assignments together, consulting assignments. And over the months of us working together, it was then that he introduced me to this. His latest idea that he'd had that was in the lab, and it was Lusio Rehab. Now, what he actually showed me was literally, it was this ridiculous invention that literally looked like an engineer had built it. It was so unpretty, I can't think of the words. And he and I just got to talking about how he might commercialize it, how he might turn it into something that, could build a future for him. I think what emerged for me over that time is that I really went first with no expectation that I would get involved in that business. But I think what Armin realized is that, he needed some help, and he needed the help in a more sustained way than just me giving coaching. So it was at that point that he said, look, I know you've got Explore the Blue, but will you come in as CEO of Lusio Rehab? I need help in making this product go to market, help making it stick. I need help on every front. And that's actually how our relationship began. So this freedom through employment and Explore the Blue actually led through to Lusio Rehab, which is freedom through mobility. And so there's this real common theme for me that I keep ending in businesses that are about creating some sort of freedom for people. I mean, first off, it was commercial, but now it's about mobility. And I keep coming back to that theme somehow.
Mm-hmm. And look, I know, there's so many people that meet people like Armin and, have that gut feeling that is the right thing, but just don't follow through with it. What do you think, was the cause where you actually did follow your intuition versus passing it up? Because I know for a lot of our audience, these opportunities come across their desk all the time, but they don't often grab them. How did you go about that process of grabbing it?
Yeah. Armin was one of 7 people I tried this with last year, actually, or 2 years ago. So I literally met 7 people or more that were return to work mums, return to work dads, people that had, something that I saw in them where I went, if they could just be safe, and make money and had some time with understanding leadership, they could do something really great. And not all of those experiments worked. But it was something, it's just looking at them, seeing something, we're going, look, there's something there. I don't know what it is. We just need time to explore it. And I think, if I'd been in a corporate world, my old jobs, I would never have had that opportunity. I would never have had the opportunity to really say to whoever I was working for, the CEO or something, look, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to give this lady or this guy a chance. I just need time to see what evolves. And I think that was the key element. I could look at them, make a decision, take a calculated gamble, if you like, and trust in the outcome. And that's exactly what it was with Armin. I remember meeting him and just thinking, God, this guy's never going to get a job. And then feeling for him and just going, but he's got so much talent, he deserves an opportunity. And I really see that playing out a lot. I see it a lot in the market in Australia, that the right people don't always get given the chance.
Yeah, look, I think it's so true. At the moment, I've just employed 2 interns, and both from overseas studying here in Australia, and they just said they've been for so many job interviews and people just won't give them the light of day, where I've given them a great opportunity. They're helping me considerably. I'm mentoring them. It's working really well. But I think there are, I don't know, I think, corporate doesn't give those opportunities. I think that's one of the great benefits of running your own company like you are, and like I am, and most of our listeners, that you do get that freedom and you actually can make those calculated investments in people and also time. I think that's what makes it absolutely wonderful. But you said that, there's still not a day goes by where you don't maybe think about going back to your old world at some point. Just tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, I know it's probably a terrible admission from a founder of a business, isn't it? I think, when I walk into the office, any day of the week, I don't know where the challenges are going to come from. It's constant change, constant bombardment of stimulus, and like you said at the beginning, it really is. We're working on something. If it's not the only type in its world, it's got to be one of the first in the world. This is this prescription gaming, getting people with disabilities some freedom through mobility by getting them to do their rehab, right? And so it's a really new world. I think I'm coining the phrase disability tech. And it's complicated and it's hard, and I'm dealing with stuff I've never dealt with before, like therapeutic goods and not-for-profits and all sorts of stuff. And I sometimes just wish for the comfort of the job that I know I'm really good at, which is running consultancy businesses, and the stability of I've got 20 years experience in that. I know what I'm doing every day, and I know that I can make money for myself and other people. And, I miss that. I think someone's told me, I miss that being in flow. And sometimes I think about the past going, it would be great to be in flow rather than trying to invent this thing, not only the product, but the market for it every day. And that's the challenge. It's the stability of knowing what I've done in the past and knowing I'm good in it versus creating this new thing,
No, look, I think that's so powerful, and I think that's often the other conflict I see a lot of our listeners have is that the financial return versus the lifestyle as well. So going back often to that, to where you are good and where you're best at, often comes with constraints around other corporate behaviors or other corporate value misalignments or other things. So it is really hard to strike that balance. And, I think that's the tension that a lot of us that have left corporate like you deal with every day. And it sounds like it's just a constant thing for you in your life. Is it, and I know I've interviewed lots of people and it's a similar thing, is that just how it is? Like, do you sort of rationalize to say, well, that's just how it's going to be because it is something that's so unique and so different that I'm doing here?
Well, yeah, I'm ridiculously lucky. I mean, I really am. The consultancy work that I do, I use to fund I bootstrap the disability tech business with consultancy. And there's this virtuous cycle that we talked about before, that I've got a few clients that understand what I'm trying to achieve, and they support me ridiculously, probably even when I don't deserve it. And what I mean by that is, stuff happens in Lusio, which means I've got to go off radar for a couple of days. I can't be as attentive as you want me to be. But I think that they know the money that they pay me funds this other thing that I'm working on. And for better or worse, I'm completely transparent with them about what I've got to do. And I find that they're actually really forgiving of it because, let's say I'm working with a GM or a CEO or whoever. They've got their own challenges, and I think they see the challenges that I've got, despite me working consulting for them or recruitment for them. I think they see the challenges that I've got mirrored in the businesses that they've got. And I'll have some conversation about, the trying to create the most valuable company I can create. So I have the ability to make as much difference as I can, I want to make. And then we have conversations around creating, companies that have got a decent multiple so they can do the same thing that they want to do with their company. So I'm in this weird world where my recruitment and consultancy work actually feeds the disability business. So I'm lucky in that, I don't have the same financial pressures that maybe others have. It's more about the complexity of what I'm trying to achieve. And sometimes it's just not about the money necessarily. It's just about simplifying life and me going, oh God, why am I making this so hard for myself? Couldn't it be a lot easier? Couldn't I just go back to doing really good work for clients and something that I really know? I was going to say, what I think brings me back to it is, one day I'm in a suit down at Barangaroo and I'm talking about building teams and organizational structure and corporate. And the next day I'm in a pair of thongs and shorts fitting these devices to kids who have just got, limited function and mobility. And, it's not that I don't love the corporate world, I do. And I feel really lucky for my education and network in that. But I can see that being used for higher purpose. I see the past, as I say, 17, 20 years, whatever it is, as the facilitator of what I need to do now. And what I need to do now is make a difference in that world. And that's what stops me. The question of why don't you go back? That's what stops me. I can see that they're linked. I'm just exploring the depth of how. And I can sense that there's a difference to be made in the world that I'm now moving in. And I love that. So it's hard, but I love it.
Yeah, look, that's so powerful. And I suppose that was really the premise behind the name Build, Live, Give, is that, you build a great business, you live a good life, and you give back. And what I'm hearing from you is actually, you're blending those three together at once, which I think is brilliant. And if you, walk into a party or someone asks you, hey, Chris, what does Lusio Rehab do? How do you best describe what you do?
Well, first thing is I always try and avoid the question of what do you do, and it's my own thing that I think it's such a standard question, and I don't like putting people on the spot, and I don't like this whole definition of what do you do, or this whole the roles that it creates. But if pushed, I generally say, look, I'm really lucky that I've got a couple of businesses, and the one that I'm working on and that I'm really proud of is the one that's focused on creating freedom through mobility. And we've got a goal of helping 10,000 people in the next 5 years achieve that freedom. That's generally how I start it. And then the conversation invariably goes, so how do you do that? And then I say, well, we've invented this concept of prescription gaming. We've invented a software system that, enables children to do rehab anywhere in the world, and be monitored by their physician anywhere else in the world, and keep them on track to make sure they achieve their mobility goals. I mean, it always ends up in a great conversation. There's no, I mean, I don't know if you know these stats, but 1 in 5 households in Australia have someone with a disability in them. The numbers are staggering. It's one in 10 actually have a disability. So there's this whole segment of society that's impacted and is significantly, I feel it's underrepresented in the effort that's made to include them. And, there is no party I go to these days without a ridiculous conversation, because then it always goes into, well, how do you fund that? And then I end up having the conversation of, well, I'm really lucky in that I have a very low barrier to entry consulting business, and I just provide advice for clients on sales, leadership, and recruitment. That's how the conversation goes.
Great. And as far as the the business model for Lusio Rehab? I know that I normally ask, in a context of, a commercial model like consulting, for example, but in the Lusio Rehab model perspective, like how are you going to commercialize it? How's it get funded to help you create these 10,000 brilliant experiences?
Well, the good news is we've got cash in the bank, and we're okay till for a few months yet. And that's through a combination of bootstrapping the business for mine and my business partner's money. We're really lucky to get on an accelerator called Remarkable, and they funded us. We've also, met some, I don't know really how I describe them other than really cool guys who believe in what we do. Some tech entrepreneurs who said, well, we're going to give you some cash, seed investors. And then I think the last bit of, I don't know how, any other way to call it than luck, is that Remarkable is the brainchild of an organization called Cerebral Palsy Alliance. And so they do some amazing work around people with physical and brain injuries that impairs movement. And I'm not doing their range of services a justice there, but people can check them out. Cerebral Palsy Alliance. Their clinical team, their CEO, their marketing team, I don't know. Everybody that I've come into contact there has been a ridiculous supporter of ours. And again, quite frankly, sometimes when we haven't deserved it, to the point whereby they've stepped in and started funding, as they're a B2B customer now, started funding the work that we're doing so we can distribute it to their physio centers around the country. We are I wouldn't say we're very early because we have a working business, we have a working product. It's been commercially produced, but they're the ones that have been brave enough to go, not only will we help fund it, but we're going to help you shape what it is so you can have the maximum impact. So, our funding is multiple source. It's bootstrapping, it's investment, it's an accelerator, and now it's a major customer it's basically a group of people that have gone, I believe in your story. I think that's the best summary. Yeah, a group of people saying, I believe in what you're doing.
Great. And obviously, the cerebral palsy is one key partner for you. How else are you getting new clients? How do you go about getting new clients?
Well, our first commercial production run arrived in Australia mid-March. So back there, until that point, we were sort of, working out who our clients would be. Since then, we have been any organization that works with people that do physiotherapy. Any organization that does physiotherapy for its clients is a potential client of ours. And anybody who's ever needed physiotherapy is a potential client of ours. It just so happens that we're really focused on those people who have to do physiotherapy every single day for the rest of their lives. Now, in terms of getting clients, there is no family I have met yet or organization in the space that I have met yet when they're dealing with people who've got to do physio imagine it, physio every single day for the rest of your life. There is no one that doesn't want that made easier. No one that doesn't want help being motivated to do that. And so I guess what I'm finding is that I never have a conversation about what we're trying to do, which is, help people be motivated to do their physio. I never have a conversation where people go, I don't want some of that. It's the most ridiculous, I don't know about you, but going from corporate pitching where you're one of 10 or however many people trying to win the service to being the only one that offers this type of service, it's a very different problem. It's a strange problem to have. But answering your question, CPA, so cerebral palsy, I have a lot of love for, and I'm very loyal to, their support of me. But the reality is, if I'm going to help 10,000 people in the next 5 years, me and my business partners, owners. We're already starting to explore allied healthcare providers. We're looking at aged care. We're looking at so there's some great companies that do, and I'm intentionally holding back from naming them just because it's early days, but there's some great companies that just do so much work behind the scenes with, not included Australians that we're talking to going, let us help you. And I think that maybe, Paul, that's one of the unique things about our business. We're not trying to disrupt by replacing people. We're actually trying to enable them. Mm-hmm. And I think that everybody's got disruption and replace, whereas I'm coming out and let us help. Let's help you because you're the experts in what you do. And we think we've got a tool that you can use.
Yeah, it's, I just think it's, people talk a lot about purpose-driven businesses today. And like you said, I think you're creating something that is, absolutely life-changing. And, by default, then it will madly spread. And as far as, so you've got that demand side, which is fantastic. It's such a purposeful product. What do you find as your biggest challenges in scaling it at the moment?
No one's given me a map. You don't have a map, do you, Handy? There's no map to follow. So on a daily basis, I feel like we're plotting this course whereby we're probably looking back a little bit too much, going, "Now, what is it that we've just done, and where do we need to go to tomorrow?" And so I think that probably slows us a little bit, but it's probably an essential part of our business to be reflective about what we're doing to make sure that we choose the right way forward. But the challenges with that is, we're not, despite what I've said, there's money in the bank, but that's because we bootstrap it and we're careful. We're not a cash rich business. If I could wave a wand, I'd probably take some sort of philanthropy or money or something to whereby I could hire people into functions and have them perform those functions in order to enable us to scale. And to scale purposefully. And so we're always at that thing of, well, we've got this money, what do we spend it on? Should we spend it on this or that? And there's that debate. Whereas I know I've never been, frivolous with money. I've always treated it, even in corporate, as if it was my own. But I also know money enables you to, just make a decision and get it done. It changes a lot of stuff. And for us, it's we're building organically, but that, if that doesn't go well, we could suffocate ourselves. I'm not sure that makes sense, but that's certainly how I feel about it.
Yeah, look, and I think that's a very common challenge. So whether it's, at that scale, like, most people's burn rate, you've got a defined period, and yes, it is hard. And I often see where people really struggle is, when do I invest resources ahead of the curve? And that's ahead of the revenue curve. And no doubt, you're exactly the same. And also, I think for you, it may be harder because you can actually see the huge positive impact that it has in someone's life. So, to get to that 10,000, you've got to be really careful on how you invest that money. And I think that's good. But I think that positive constraint is good because I know, there's a lot of startups that are overly funded and they make, decisions that they probably too quick and they're not considered, and they're probably the other extreme. So some form of midpoint would be great. And hopefully some listeners out here that are listening to this podcast and are really buying into Chris's journey and story like I am, can contact Chris and hopefully help ease some of that pain, whether it be by resources. So, if you're someone listening here that you're brilliant at a skill and you think you can help Chris, reach out. That's one option. And then the other one is obviously investing. And Chris, what we might do now is just go into the live section, which is really about sort of getting to know you a little bit more and what you do on a day-to-day basis, other than your love of cycling. But what are some of the key habits that help you manage the complexity of this these two businesses and keeps you going each day? What are some of those daily habits that you use?
It's such a cliche, and I even feel like a cliche saying it. But these days, I don't think I go to sleep at night without actually meditating my way to it. I think there's a few podcasts out there, and the name escapes me, but there's one in particular I listen to on Apple Podcasts. I listen to it every day. I listen to it every day because I think it just stills my mind and lets me go to sleep. And actually, I think I have a good sleep. And if I don't listen to it, I don't have such a good sleep. And that just feels like, as a sort of ridiculous cliche, I almost don't want to say it, but I do. I have to remind myself, so that's one thing which is practical. The other thing that really comes to mind, I remind myself, is I have to stay committed to this purpose, this goal. I mean, one's about freedom through, this employment, and one's about freedom through mobility for 10,000 people. I have to relentlessly remind myself of that. And I think I have to relentlessly remind my business partners of that as well. And that true north, I think, just keeps us sane, just helps the decisions, I do that, I think. And then I think underpinning that is I have to remind myself constantly that I created these things so I could be commercially successful by doing the right thing. It's ridiculously important to me. In fact, it's the thing. And so it's that constant reminder of, why am I doing this? That's right, that's why I'm doing this, enables me to keep on going. And that's probably the biggest habit that I have throughout the day, because there's moments when I don't want to anymore.
And you've talked a lot about the work, the brilliant work you're doing with Lusio Rehab, and in the preamble before we went to air, you talked about another cause that's close to your heart, which is the Black Dog Institute. And maybe you just want to give listeners a quick understanding what you do for them and why.
I mean, I don't know that I do that much for them, other than I go on an annual bike ride with a good mate of mine who had some mental health issues a few years back. So every year, these guys at Black Dog ride. I mean, they do a lot of work, but the particular thing I do is I ride from Sydney to Dubbo, so it's about 450 k's. And I do that because it lets me connect with my friend who asked me to do it with him at first. But it also lets me connect to a community at large who I think are either personally affected by or who have people who have been affected by mental health issues. And it's a wonderfully authentic environment in which you get to, do exercise. But the other part of that is, I don't know if it's an age thing or it's a profession thing, but I'd like to think I'm open. I'd like to think I'm vulnerable. And I meet a lot of people every day who've got challenges, and whether it's a permanent challenge or a temporary challenge, mental health is a real issue for lots of people. I mean, we all have our dark days. And so I think that for me, I can't claim that I'm the world's biggest supporter of it, and in terms of the stuff that I do. I just know it's something that I'm importantly involved with, and because of that, annual getaway, it makes me acutely aware again of the issues people face on a day-to-day basis. It's almost like my retreat every single year to remind myself of why I do what I do. So that's my thing. Oh, and also I get to do a lot of cycling on the way, so that's the added bonus for me.
Brilliant. Well, look, the last section is around the action section. We're just going to change the tempo up a little, which just wants some, short, sharp responses to these questions. So the first one is, what's your top 3 productivity tips?
Make decisions in the moment on the best information that you have to hand. Don't procrastinate.
Yeah.
and create a headspace for yourself to think about stuff other than work. That's what comes to mind.
Okay, brilliant. And what are some of your favorite apps on either your mobile phone or your desktop that you use each day?
Well, I thought about it. I'm not really much of an app person. The things that I find myself going back to, though, is just podcasts. I'm on it daily. And, what I really love doing actually is when I'm under real stress, I listen to stuff to give me perspective. People that have been through whatever situation they've been through. And it's just a bit of a wake-up call for me to go, God, McGowan, get on with it. It ain't that bad. Have a little perspective. And I find myself listening to those things very often. So it's less of an app. It's more about listening to stuff for perspective that I would do.
Great. And what are some of the podcasts that you love and recommend?
I mentioned before about the stuff that I listen to, but that's I listened to James Altucher. I've been listening to American history recently. Stuff you should know, I find quite amusing and informative. But I've got a couple of clients who continuously keep sending me stuff like TED Talks, podcasts, or TED Radio Hour it is. And so it's a full range. So I don't know that I necessarily have a default I go back to. But what I'm interested in is about, people exploring themselves and authenticity. And I'm particularly interested in authentic people who have made it commercially, because I think that those shining examples are rare. And I think those are the people that I'm most drawn to in terms of the podcasts that I listen to. And weirdly enough, I think my clients know that as well. So those are the ones that they send me.
Brilliant. And you can definitely send them this one as well now, back the other way.
Yeah, that's right.
You've just summed it up beautifully. But just on some parting advice, what's some parting advice that you've got for the BLG audience?
Probably the most difficult advice of all that everyone's struggling with, and that would be, if you can, either on your own or with somebody else, find something that's purposeful, commit to it, and chase it, and then every day remind yourself of it. Check in, make sure it's still what you want, and then do that, because I reckon it's probably the thing that keeps me going.
Brilliant. And as I said earlier, you really are living the values of what we aspire to, which is build, live, give. So it's been fantastic hearing your journey. What we'll do is, in the show notes, we'll definitely have all the links that you've mentioned. We'll also put in there your LinkedIn profile, and also links to Lusio Rehab, and also to Explore the Blue. But it was brilliant having you on, Chris. Thanks for sharing your journey with us, and just thanks for doing what you're doing. If you can impact 10,000 people with mobility issues over the next 5 years, I think that's a brilliant, purposeful pursuit. And we are inspired by what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for listening to the Corporate Escapees podcast, brought to you by the team at Build, Live, Give. If you found this podcast helpful, please share it with other corporate escapees. If you would like to join a community of like-minded peers, please visit www.buildlivegive.com. Until next